Okay, so good morning and welcome to the Evolution of a Property podcast, episode 4, with your host, Sam Watterson. I am really excited today to be joined by the fantastic Dan Cooper of Element Properties and Cooper and Roman Estate Agents in Hull. And before I start the interview, I just want to say a massive thank you to Dan, because it was actually Dan who was my inspiration to get into doing this podcast. He invited me on his podcast a few weeks ago, and off the back of that, I decided to set up my own podcast, do my own interviews, and it was Dan who's guided me and mentored me through helping me get that set up and giving me some advice. So I just want to say, really appreciate your help on that, Dan. And without further ado, I'll say welcome. And if you want to give a quick introduction to yourself and what you're all about.
Yeah, morning, Sam, and thanks for the nice introduction. I appreciate it, and like I say, it's not an easy thing setting up a podcast, but I'm sure you do fantastic, and we can sort of leverage each other. Obviously, you being on my podcast and me coming on yours. So, quick introduction to myself then, Sam. My name's Dan Cooper. I am a property sourcer, property investor. So I'm based over in Hull, Kingston upon Hull. For those of you who don't know, that's right on the northeast. Not far from Lincoln, Grimsby, etc. It's a bit of a place in the country where everyone sort of forgets about, and they think it's still horse and cart, etc. But it's a fantastic place, and I'm sure I can touch on that. Primarily, though, my business is property sourcing. So I started a property sourcing company a few years ago, and that's led, to various things that I'm doing now.
It's interesting that you refer to where you live as Kingston upon Hull. Me being a northerner, I call it Hull. And it reminded me of a funny story I heard a few years ago where I think she was an American lady, had came over from wherever she'd been on business and flew into something like Heathrow Airport. And she wanted to go to Kingston upon Thames. Yeah. And she told the taxi driver, "Can you take me to Kingston?" And he put it in his sat nav and it brought up Hull. So she ended up going on like a 4-hour taxi ride all the way up to Hull, arrived there, and she was like, "I don't think this is where I'm meant to be." So that was quite funny. But with the theme of this podcast being about business and business models, I'm quite interested to hear about your business model, because I know that you run multiple businesses. The first one, the Element Properties, which is your sourcing business, and then Cooper and Roman, which is your lettings business. And state agency. So if you want to just talk me through what your business model is and sort of what got you started in property and how that's progressed to where you are today.
Yes, I'll take it back a few years then. So like all fantastic ideas, they tend to start in a pub. So I'd moved to Hull in 2017, and just going back to your Kingston point, I think that's the first time in my life I've ever called it Kingston upon Hull. So I don't know why I did that. So yeah, I moved to Hull in 2017, and I can touch on why I moved here a bit later in the podcast. But so I was sitting in the pub having a few beers, and one of my mates he had a couple of buy-to-lets, and he was talking to me about getting into property, and I said, I'd love to have the money to get into property. Unless you're sort of in it and you understand all the strategies and everything out there raising finance, it's sort of one of the misconceptions that you need to save 50, 60, 70,000 pounds and go buy on a deposit, etc. And he said, well, there's various other reasons. He's done, I think he did like one of legacy training or something like that years ago. He said, well, why don't you property source? So, me being me, literally went down a rabbit hole, pigeonhole, got home, Googled, YouTubed, everything about property sourcing, come across this company, they're called Goliath Property Sourcing. I don't know where they're based. It's just like more online training, I think. And I signed up to their like Mastermind. It was like 99 quid a month. And in that month over Christmas, I literally did every single training and resource and then cancelled my membership. I had all the materials and everything. So obviously did them a disservice. And then I just went out there, doing viewings, trying to build an investor base, but I would say, so I started that in April 2019. Had a baby in August 2019, so I sort of like, dropped off a bit and stayed at home. But it wasn't until Jan 2020 where I sort of started to ramp it up. So primarily, it's sourcing buy-to-let properties or buy refurbished finance properties in Hull, working with investors. So from 2020 to now, I've sort of built my own portfolio, managed to sort of build some investors' portfolio, and that's sort of, like I said, using the model buy refurbish or finance. For those who don't know, you basically buy a property, a rundown property, spend money on it, refurbishing it, and then obviously you remortgage or get lending on it at a higher value and get some money back. It's a way of investing using momentum, but in today's current climate, now we're recording this in April 2022, the market's been bonkers for the last 18 months, 2 years, and trying to get the opportunities that I got back then is proving more difficult. So going back to your original question, started property sourcing, and I saw that as a way to gain access into investing myself. So I thought, if I can source loads of properties, obviously build cash in the bank using the sourcing fees, I can then obviously deploy that into assets myself to build my own portfolio. I was fortunate that when I sourced the property for an investor, I also sourced a couple off the back of that, a buy to let, or BRR, buy refurbish refinance, as well as a flip. And they were too good to sort of give away, but I didn't have any money. So I sort of put a proposal together to an investor who I just sourced for and said, would you like to loan me the money, take them off me, or JV? Fortunately for myself, she said, let's JV on them. So since then, we've sort of scaled a business, 50-50 shareholding is a great relationship. And that sort of leads me onto the path to the management as well. So like yourself, obviously on the podcast that we had, when you start sourcing, well, I'll take it back. So obviously lettings and management is the end of the line. So primarily you source a property, so you need to source it. If it needs refurbishment, you do all of that. And then the main part everyone cares about is obviously getting their cash flow and getting their money at the end of the day. And in order to do that, you need to let the property and have it managed. So because I was sourcing properties, buy to let properties for investors, whether they were, local or out of town, they obviously needed someone to manage it. And at the time I would say, well, I know a few agents I can put you in touch with. And I was just passing away revenue, probably collecting a small referral fee. And I thought, well, it's a lot more attractive if I can say, well, I can source you a property, refurbish the property, and I'll let him manage it for you. So everything is done in-house with me, obviously using my sort of local network, builders, solicitors, brokers, etc. So yeah, myself and my business partner, Tracy, who we have the joint venture business, decided to set up the lettings and management as well. So everything ties in together, all has synergies with each other.
Yeah, I mean, our business models are very similar, to be honest. And for anyone who's out there thinking of property sourcing as a route to get into property, it's a really good way of basically getting an income while you're trying to find your own investments, so that you're not sort of living hand to mouth or going from deal to deal and never know where your next paycheck's coming from. So one of the things Dan was describing there is what we call deal packaging. And this is kind of a combination of sourcing as well as building your own portfolio. And fundamentally, what you do is you go out into the world, you view lots of properties, you do off-market advertising to find opportunities to buy properties. And then you make a decision. Do I want to buy the property myself and fund it using private investor finance or your own funds? Or do I source that one on to a client for a fee? And it's a really great way of kind of covering two bases. Now just think, if you're just viewing properties for yourself, for your own portfolio, you might look at something and think, well, that doesn't quite fit in with what I'm looking to do, whether it be your strategy or your numbers. But there's lots of people out there who would happily pay you a fee for that property. So rather than leaving money on the table every time you're doing a viewing, you should be looking at monetizing it one way or another, whether it be in your own portfolio or to an investor. So personally, I've focused all my effort and energy on finding properties for my investors over the last few years. And I've built a team behind me to do that. Now that I'm sort of in the 4th year of my sourcing and I've done multiple projects and got a really good track record, I'm now starting to look at taking some of those projects myself and now looking to raise investor finance off the back of the examples I've got to then deliver them. So I'm kind of running 2 strategies where if we find 2 houses, I'll have one, an investor has one. So the business continues to grow and I grow my portfolio as well. So it's really interesting to hear your thoughts on that. Just going back to one of the points you said when you answered that question, you said about the market being bonkers. So what have you done to adapt to the changing market, and how have you found it's been fluid in real time?
So I would say, like, when it all first kicked off, I had opportunities in the pipeline. Now, one thing I would say to many sources out there it's sales at the end of the day. So you're providing a service and you're obviously trying to find products for investors. So you need to keep filling that sales funnel. You need to keep filling that pipeline. And like you touched on then, whether it's offline marketing, online marketing, you need to make sure that your pipeline's being filled. And at the time when it was all sort of kicking off, like COVID, etc., I had a pipeline. Market shut down for a bit, and then when everyone came back, it was crazy. Now, through building a reputation in Hull, through network, what we've been able to do. Myself, I work with a lady called Jocelyn. We work closely on a lot of stuff. What we decided to do is personally, I sold a portfolio for a landlord to a social housing provider. That was a 3-week cash completion from instruction on a £610,000 portfolio. And the landlord had a lot of other properties. A few other landlords came to us with portfolios. So we decided to focus on selling portfolios to care providers or to REITs. So for those who don't know what REITs are, that's a real estate investment trust. Ultimately, a lot of them will buy based on spreadsheet numbers. So as long as yields there, obviously the condition of the property, etc., is suitable, they tend to buy on that. So what I found is I say minimal effort. It's not minimal effort because you still have everything to go through in the process. There's bigger rewards. So just to put it in perspective, them 10 properties that I sold on behalf of this landlord, it was £610,000. The landlord netted 600 and I netted 10. Now the fund paid £10,000 as well, and that was split 3 ways. And that was 6,666 quid sourcing fee within 3 weeks from instruction. I never viewed one of them properties.
Yeah.
All I had was a 20-minute meeting in Costa with a landlord.
Yeah.
So that's the glorious, sourcing's fun. I wish it was all like that, but it's not. Yeah. Because sometimes you might have to go and view 20, 30 rundown properties, spend all that time viewing properties, appraising, working out the estimated refurb costs, putting in all your offers just to get maybe one. Yeah. So it swings and roundabouts. And for those who, are interested in sourcing, things like that come with time. You just need to get out there and you just need to be seen. You just need to sort of build a sort of brand and reputation. Like I said, working with portfolio landlords, working with social housing providers, care providers, as well as that, myself and Jocelyn, we have a good relationship with someone based in Singapore. So they have various overseas clients who want to deploy their cash into the UK property market because it's a lot less volatile than many sort of Asian markets. So essentially what we do is we have their criteria. We will look on market, off market, understand whether the properties suit their ROI based on, rent achievable. And if it fits, we'll offer them, go to them, say, look, we've got this property and we'll go ahead. So I'll be perfectly honest, their criteria is a lot less stringent than what UK investors are, or some UK investors, I'll say sort of educated property investors. So it just means that as a property sourcer, it's not that my job becomes easier, it's just not as hard. So in going back to the original question, the way we sort of adapted was working with portfolio landlords who maybe have hit by a Section 24 tax, which is, that come into effect, I think it was 100% last year, whereby people owning properties in their first name, there's obviously more tax they will pay on the income. So obviously if it takes them into a higher rate taxpayer, working with them and overseas clients. I still have a UK investor base, but I've just had to pivot and work with sort of other parties really.
Just to sort of expand on what Dan was saying, one thing that I sort of want to hit home to people when it comes to sourcing is you've kind of got to view a property or a sourcing service as one of two things. You're either selling a deal, and it might be below market value, it might be off market, it might be a commercial conversion, where you're just selling it based on the mechanics of that deal, or you're selling a service. And that might be where someone just wants a standard vanilla buy-to-let, low risk, long-term investment for cash that they've generated in a business or inherited or something, but they need the service. So when the market changes, you've got to look at what people then start to struggle with. So for example, when the market's quiet, the service that you can offer is putting in lower offers and getting discounts accepted on properties. And that's what you should be pushing. This is what I can do for you. I'll view a property, put in an offer below the asking price to see if we can get a discount. But when the market's hot and things are selling within a few days for market rates and above, what you need to appreciate is if your clients are in London, for example, and they want properties in Leeds, they've got to physically get from London to Leeds to view the property. And if properties are selling fast, they might have the situation where they're ringing up on a Friday to book a viewing and they're not taking any more viewings, or they book the viewing for a Saturday, book the trains, and then Friday night they're getting a call from the agent saying that property's gone now. So what we do is we look at what the market is today and we sell the benefits of what we can do that benefits the situation we're in. So speed, contacts with the agents, logistics, knowing the areas, being able to move quickly, not having to spend 2 weeks doing due diligence so that by the time we've decided to put an offer in, the property's gone. So when it comes to the buy to lets, we kind of push that and we go looking for the investors who are looking for a hand in doing something they could do themselves, but they want the service rather than the deal. And the other sort of point I wanted to make was you can either get properties off market or on market. And what you find is when the market's hot and things are selling quickly, most of the properties will sell on the market rather than off the market. So if all your marketing and your strategies rely on getting off market properties, you might get less of those that you would normally. So really you should think, yeah, do off market, but how can you monetize the properties that are on the market as well as the ones off the market? And standard vanilla buy-to-lets aside, one of the strategies that we work to good effect is more complicated conversion projects, whether it be HMO conversions or serviced accommodation conversions, where the complexity of delivering the end product is such that the client needs you for that, but also you're not competing with hundreds and hundreds of other investors, because there might only be one or two in your area that can deliver or actually want to do those strategies. You'd be surprised by how many people no longer do HMOs who might have done it 10, 15 years ago because it's no longer the sort of new thing and they've moved on to something else, even though it is a really lucrative part of the market. And another point I wanted to make about the overseas investors. So, you know, whenever you think about someone, you need to think about what motivates them. And it's quite easy for us to always think that the only thing that motivates people is money. Now, I know for a fact that I don't always go with the cheapest suppliers. I don't always go for the cheapest of something, because for me, I'm more interested in it being delivered on time, less hassle, not having to chase, and it being good quality rather than it being the cheapest. And overseas investors who are from Singapore, Hong Kong, who are investing in the UK property market through property sources they probably met online and never met in person, it's probably more important for them that they actually get a safe and secure investment that does exactly what it says on the tin rather than having over bloated returns. So they're probably more interested in working with someone trustworthy who can deliver the goods and it's safe and secure and they're not going to have problems in the future rather than trying to get the massive returns. So it's really interesting to see that you've explored that market. So as your business has evolved then, and you've gone from deal packaging to lettings, what struggles have you had in lettings? Because personally, I've been a letting agent before as a sourcing agent, so I knew all about what to expect. And a lot of people go from sourcing to letting. So have you had any real struggles or real battles that you've had to overcome?
In terms of struggles, I would say struggles / challenges, you know, semantics really, but setting up the lettings and management, obviously the lettings market, I would say opposed to sourcing. Now, yes, sourcing has to be compliant, but it's a lot less regulated than what lettings is. So with lettings, you know, you're protecting somebody's investment even through lettings, because, you know, when you're sort of trying to find a tenant, you've got to make sure the tenant's suitable, the affordability, the credit referencing. You need to make sure that they're a good fit for the property. But as well as that, from an agent perspective, you know, things like providing them the EPC, gas safety, protecting the deposit. There's a lot of things you have to do just before someone even gets through the door. And I found that learning everything, and I don't know everything. There's a lot of things that I'll still continue to learn. But I found like the regulations, the compliance and all of the learning, you know, there's a lot more than I first thought. Was I naive? I don't think I was naive. I knew there was a lot, but you know, it's a new business. Like many new businesses, you still have to sort of, you know, learn a lot of things. And one thing I would say is probably time. So, you know, in one day I want to be at all the businesses systemized, run with family, and I can have a, luxurious lifestyles. I say sitting on the beach. I'm not really bothered about sitting on the beach, to be honest, but, just having a lot of time. But, at the minute, I'd say that it's very admin heavy. Now we're recruiting an apprentice, had a few interviews, so got a few more booked in, and it's all of like the, listing the property, then receiving the inquiries, then screening them on the phone before you even get them into the viewing, doing the applications, like all of this stuff. I need that taken off of my lap so I can focus on business development. That's where my skill set is. I'm great working with investors. I'm great working with clients. I'm great, securing properties off vendors. That's where I need to be placed, not sitting, I say not sitting in the office, but I mean like not sort of bogged down by the admin tasks. And that's one of the things that I've found has probably been, more of a challenge. But like I say, we're recruiting now. We are growing. And I guess like obviously you get a lot of new business. It's building a reputation as an agent as well, because we are new. We need to build that reputation. So we've got various investors, manage our own property, but then it's again is growing the business organically through word of mouth, through get a landlord on board. He might buy 5 properties, they will come to you, and it's maintaining existing relationships and building the new relationships. Hull is a fairly small place when you think of, populations around 290,000. It's not a huge place. Like Hull city centre is like the Bexleyheath town centre where I grew up.
Yeah.
That was just a town. That was one little borough. And there are quite a lot of agents. So you need to make sure you stand out as well. And the way to do that is, like we touched on it, is service. Provide a great service, and the landlords and investors, will come back to you. But I think what's good, and obviously like yourself, you do the sourcing, so you find investors for the sourcing, it feeds into your lettings. It's exactly the same as me, but I think being an investor myself as well, I understand, what does an investor want? Money in their pocket, cash flow, protected investment, and being able to convey that to a landlord, say, I invest myself, we manage our own properties, we understand the cash flow is important, you don't want your voids. Is there an opportunity for guaranteed rent? How can we secure your investment and protect your investment a lot more than if you just went to Joe Bloggs on the high street? So, it's taking all of that into consideration as well.
I think as well, for people who are doing rent to rent, if you run a letting agency, it gives you the opportunity to be in front of the landlords and pitch it to them. But one tip I wanted to give the listeners out there, if you're looking at becoming a landlord for the first time, or a letting agent, and you're unsure of the compliance, read the How to Rent guide. Just Google How to Rent guide, read that. It's a really good resource. But also the answer to every question that you need to know or need to ask is on the government website. So I know the government gets a lot of stick, rightly or wrongly, for a lot of things, but actually the YouGov website and your local council's website is a very good resource of all the information you need. Everything is Googleable. The amount of questions you see on the Facebook property forums that people, if they just typed in the same question into Google, they would have got the answer. And I'm a fan of going down rabbit holes. And, when I set Watson Co up in 2017, I decided that I needed to be really shit hot at the compliance, and just went down a rabbit hole. So I started reading all the gas safety regulations, the property ombudsman code of practice. I read that back to front, and just read all the legislation. And now what I do is every time there's a change or an update, is I keep an eye on the industry press. So I read Property Industry Eye, and it'll tell you when there's an act of parliament coming up, or there'll be a discussion. And then I read the guidance notes. So when we had COVID in 2020, the government released the guidance for estate agents and letting agents on the 12th of May. And I just read it. The tenant fee ban, they released the guidance notes. Just read things from start to front. It's not going to be the most entertaining thing, but the worst thing you can do is put a tenant in a property and get something wrong and then not be able to get them out. It can cost thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds. So just reading a few documents from time to time, although it's boring, is well worth the investment. So just going back to the interview then, you mentioned skill set. And I know we've obviously talked before this interview just to prep some questions. So what I want to know, Dan, is before property, what were you doing, and what was your sort of career path before you decided to go to the pub with your friend and start a sourcing business?
What was I doing before property? Dossing about, really. Nah. So I'll take it back. Throughout my whole life, I wanted to join the army. So I almost left school at 16 to join. Applied for Welbeck Defence. Sixth form, college was 1 grade off. And then I was going to leave after sixth form and join the army. And then I decided to go to uni, the reason being you could get quicker promotion and higher band of pay. So everything was focused around the army. When I was at university, I was training, I did my selection, it was for army officer, and then I got through to the final stage. But I had an injury, I had shin splints, but it was something that I couldn't shake. And it sort of rattled me, and I was like, I don't really know what to do now, because I've been so focused on joining the army. Now it's been sort of taken away from me. What do I do? So I didn't really know. So I booked a one-way ticket to Australia. You could say I was sort of running away from reality or what, but I booked a one-way ticket to Australia, lived out there for a year, did the farm work. But that's where I sort of did a few sales roles. So I worked selling credit cards for Westpac, which is a bank. I was extremely successful there. And I went to Melbourne and I worked for a company called FleetCor. So they sell fleet cards, global company. Within like 8 weeks, I was sales colleague of Australasia, so I sort of realised that I was quite good at sales. So when I came back to the UK, obviously I was in London, my now wife Liv, I met her in Australia. That's what brought me up to Hull, for those sort of questioning whilst I'm up there.
Hull.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm trying to keep it away from the whole accent. I'm trying to stay as southern as possible. But so yeah, moving up. When we came back, moved up north, started working in sales for a company, Hull-based company, and was really successful and went through the ranks pretty quickly to a key account manager. So I worked in the food manufacturing industry. So all of my clients were, Mars, Green King, Britvic, global food and beverage brands. And that taught me a lot, really. It sort of made me understand about client relationship and nurturing, and especially sales pipeline as well. And I think a lot of these things are transferable into sourcing. You need to understand what your client wants. Maybe they don't know what they want, but it's about telling them what they want / need. And there's many ways, obviously, you can do that using sales psychology, etc. Building the pipeline, etc. And then from then, I actually left that job. And I remember I left on the 20th of March, 2020. And I was starting my other job, I think, on I left on the 22nd of March. I left my job on the 22nd of March because I resigned, and I was starting again on the 30th, the Monday the 30th, I think, or whatever it was. And we went into lockdown on the 23rd, and I was literally, I had a 5 days, like the week between, and I sat there and was like, shit, am I even going to have a job? Got a young baby, mortgage. Fortunately, they kept me on. I went and worked for a port authority, so UK's largest port authority, sort of managing commercial relationships and sort of import-export business across the Humber region, across the 4 ports that we have, the 4 ports they own. So that, again, similar to client relationships. That was more of a commercial-based role, and that was extremely interested. But that sort of, we work closely with like the property team, so securing license agreements, land agreements, lease agreements for land. So there's that aspect of it as well. But working with people who are masters in their field, and I think anyone in any job, just look who's above you and sort of absorb as much information as you can. I think that's really important. But so yeah, it's always in sales, commercial. Obviously, I was doing property sourcing at the same time, because I wanted to obviously build up that sort of cash pot, obviously to invest myself whilst I was still working. So what I would say, if you're thinking about sourcing, don't go quit your day job on day one, because it's good to have a job. And I started to resent my job a bit, because I started to get busy, but shifting my mindset, if I thought about it, like working was a vehicle to get out of my job, because it gave me the security so I could focus on building my sourcing business. And when it got to a certain point, I had the opportunity to leave. So yeah, my background has always been around sales and commercial.
My next question, actually.
Go on, what?
Just one thing that I haven't said yet. Me and Dan are both suffering from colds. So if you see us sort of on the YouTube muting and coughing, I do apologise. And in between me asking questions, I'm kind of sucking on the Strepsil just to stop me coughing. I think it's just a change of the seasons. But sorry for cutting you off mid-flow. But my next question was the transition from PAYE to being self-employed. Was it a transition, or was it a leap of faith? So when I decided to go full-time in property, I literally walked into my boss. I started doing a few bits, evenings and weekends, but I just went into my boss's office and I said, I'm handing my notice in. And he went, right, you're on a month's garden leave. which was great. And then I was like, right, I've got a month to earn my wage now. And then I earned my wage in the next month. I was like, right, I've got another month to earn my wage. And it kind of went like that for the first 6 years. So tell me about your experience. I think you've kind of already started answering that with the transition, but explain, either it was a leap of faith where you stopped one thing and started another, or it was a transition, and explain how you did that transition, because there'll be loads of people listening to this who want to start sourcing, you've got a full-time job, and it's that whole crossing over from one to the other that people kind of struggle with.
Yeah, I guess it's like if you used to think of it, a bit of an analogy for those who can't see, it's like, imagine a pair of scales, they're near the old school scales. So you've got your job over here, you've got your security, you've got everything. And then obviously, let's say you've got your business, whether it's sourcing, whether it's a completely different business. What you need to do, you need to sort of bring up that income up to get to an even point or even surpass where you currently are in your situation. Did I do that? No. Now, yes, I was PAYE, I was earning a good salary, but throughout the time of obviously the joint venture business, I was fortunate whereby I scaled quite quickly, had some really good deals, unicorn or money out deals. I don't profess to be able to source them, but obviously market conditions, is supported that. But then obviously with the letting agent sort of thing in the pipeline, I was fortunate my business partner said, look, you've done extremely well whilst you're in a full-time job. Imagine what you can do if you didn't have a job.
You were doing all that and setting everything up while still at work full-time?
Well, the lettings we didn't. We started just after, but the property investment and the sourcing, everything was whilst I was working. So
how did you find the time to do the viewings?
COVID.
Right. So you were working from home?
Yeah. So I started my job, like I said, in March 2020. Basically, this time 2 years ago, I worked from home for 18 months in a new job because it was an office-based role on the ports. So I learned everything, but I couldn't get so immersed into the role like I would do. I didn't have all the full induction. I couldn't go to the port because the port obviously and stuff. So I used it to my benefit really, and
Right.
still did viewings. And I'll probably say I did a lot more. I probably achieved a lot more because of COVID. So it was a bad time for a lot of people, but
Still opportunities though.
there's still opportunity. Yeah, exactly. There's still opportunity, and I sort of took that. Did viewings, managing the refurbs, but I would still say that I still work my arse off. I'd still get up, early doors, 6 a.m., do an hour and a half to 2 hours of property-based stuff. Then I'd do my 9 to 5 or half 8 to 5, I think it was I was working. Sort my daughter out, spend time with my wife and daughter. She'd go to bed at 7. And then some nights I'd be working till 10:30.
I think when you
Saturday
start your own
mornings.
business, it's like a hobby. And if you've got a full-time job, you've got this hobby and you can see the hobby overtaking the business, it just gives you fire in your belly. I'd finished my job, I was working in sales, and I'd be doing viewings till 9:30, 10, and then all weekend just doing viewings. But I loved it. I had a little office at home, and I just felt like I was doing like something productive, something proper. And the hours I used to work when I first started were just ridiculous, but it was new, it was fresh, I was loving it, and I was building my future. And I could, having years of like, what am I going to do with my life? As soon as you start seeing the path and the clouds clear and you go, hang on a minute, this is the path, I can see it now, you can go for it. And it's
100%.
really
and it takes, some people might be listening to this podcast about, well, I don't really know about property or property sourcing. And that's not an issue. 5 years time, circumstances change. You think a lot of people before COVID was interested in property investing. That's probably why the market's gone mad, because they understand that they're so disposable in terms of work. Life isn't guaranteed.
Yeah.
So there was loads of things, and security, income security. A lot of people laid off, and then people thought, well, I need to secure it. How can I secure it? And then obviously people have looked at other options, but asset class property is obviously benefited. But like I say, I was fortunate where I was given an opportunity. So I still have the opportunity to earn a bit of an income through the business, because it's where it is. So yeah, like it's not as much as I was on, but it was a mitigated risk. Obviously we had my wife, we're having a baby next month. She's due next month, but I left whilst my wife was pregnant for our second child. And you can imagine the anxiety that gave her when I said, I've been given an opportunity to leave full-time work. But I'm a spreadsheet guy, went for the numbers, said, look, this is cash in bank. This is how many months I have running costs. I'm going to earn this. This is going to cover these bills. This is good, so I sort of went through things quite a lot. And, it hasn't been as plain sailing. It hasn't been easy because although I worked out my monthly running costs, when you're actually doing stuff full time, using more fuel, you actually spend more money. So, I probably underestimated a bit of my monthly outgoings. But then that's not to say, but then I've got a lot more in the pipeline in terms of sales. Now, the thing about sourcing, it's very transactional. I've had properties for myself, day before exchange, fall out of bed, investors, we had a portfolio going through and the fund buying it, pulled out the day before. And one of the sales had been going on since last July and it fell out of bed 3 weeks ago because they kept pushing things. Solicitors gave an ultimatum and it fell out of bed. That for me was an £8,500 fee. So nothing's guaranteed. And it's about, like I say, your pipeline. And my first year, whilst I was working, I think my turnover was like, I only did sort of half a year because I had a baby and I did start to like 9K. Then it grew like 146%. And I've already surpassed in the last few months what I did like basically in the last two years.
It does.
It's because I have more time and I put the effort in. I work hard to make sure that I can.
When I sort of decided to leave, I didn't overthink it at all. I'm one of these people. I'm very decisive. When I wanted to do this podcast, I just did it.
Yeah.
Set up a mastermind. I just did it, and I thought I'd figure it out as I go. Sometimes that's got me into trouble because I'm too decisive, but I've kind of reined it in a little bit. But yeah, I was just like, right, I'm just going to quit my job. I didn't have a missus. I didn't have kids. Owned my own house. Owned a few property investments. Had people living with me paying rent, and I just did it. And I just got on with it. I didn't overthink it. And I didn't even do a spreadsheet, look at my costs. I basically halved my income overnight. I went from a decent sales job with decent commission for a decent company. It was an easy enough job to earn in as little as possible just to keep the wheels turning. But for me at that time, it wasn't about the money. It was about the freedom of knowing that I was going on this mad journey and I didn't know where it was going to take me. There's something else I was going to say, but I've completely forgotten what I was going to mention. Oh, also COVID. I'm very aware that a lot of people have struggled, lost their jobs, businesses went bust. But kind of me personally, my missus is a nurse. She works in a hospital. So her job's safe as houses. She's a sister. Her ward's gone from being a COVID ward to a not COVID ward, loads of overtime. So she's done really well, actually. She started doing overtime and getting double pay and, earn more than she has before. So her job's secure. And then, I look at myself and I'm thinking about my job security. So we went into lockdown on the 23rd of May. I sent all the staff home on furlough. We monitored the maintenance and I did the accounts and that was it, working from home. We had our refurbs going. I also kept the refurbs going because refurbs are one of the things that were, you can't do it from home, so you carry on the construction industry. So I kept the refurbs going, which was great. It kept me sort of busy. And then after 5 weeks, the start of May, I couldn't work from home anymore. I had a big open plan kitchen diner. My kids were there. I've got ADHD, so any little noise and my attention span's going, so I just couldn't concentrate. So I moved all my stuff back into the office on the 1st of May to start working from the office again. And then on the 12th of May, they announced that the estate agency and letting agency sector would be coming out of the restrictions. So we went back to normal, and it was really strange because I was going to work as normal and we were doing viewings and we were just operating as we would with a few extra requirements in terms of we would not go in the properties with viewers, wear masks, all that jazz, social distancing in the office and try and be, as safe as possible. But for all intents and purposes, everything went back to normal. And then it went nuts. So the rest of the world is burning. And I've got a missus who works in a hospital, so I don't have any pressures there. And then sourcing and lettings and everything just started going bananas with properties. And everyone started piling in. And our business has gone like that. So even through something as, economically destructive as COVID, people like ourselves who are in the property game, we're kind of almost insulated from that. And the kind of point I wanted to go back to is just something you saying is, people always talk about security. Oh, I want my money in the bank because it's safe. I want a job because I've got security. It's like, I've got the most security in the world. because I've got loads of knowledge, I've got loads of contacts, I'm in an industry that's recession proof. You know, if the economy tanks, everybody rents. If the economy booms, everybody buys investments properties and buys and sells houses. We're in an industry where someone's not just going to come out with an app and replace us overnight, because people need bricks and mortar. You know, refurbs, you can't get an app to go and do a refurb. You need a bloke with a tool on site. That can't be replaced by technology. You know, people have tried to come up with websites to replace letting agents. It can't be done because it's a people business, and you can't replace people with tech. You can just give them tools. So I'm in this industry that's insulated from recessions. It's insulated from being replaced by technology. Everybody needs it because everybody needs somewhere to live. And worst case scenario for me would be my business fails, right? But if my business fails, I just start another business because I can still earn money, even if this business, you know, struggles. I've not got a boss who's going to make me redundant or sell to a competitor and shut the office down or relocate or go bust, you know, redundancies or whatever. I'm completely isolated from that. The only thing that I can think that could possibly happen is I go on holiday with the missus and we're walking down the beach and a coconut falls out of the sky, lands on my head, and I forget everything I know. That's it. So you talk about security. I took the leap. I'm self-employed. I'd say I've got more security than most people. So if you're on the fence, you're hesitant about becoming self-employed or starting a property business, and security is the reason that you're not doing it, you're probably looking in the wrong areas. There's plenty of other reasons not to do it. I'm not saying be reckless, but don't make it about security because you're barking up the wrong tree.
That's it. And I think if you've got a fire in your belly, you know, like one of my podcast episodes that I did is with someone who works in the FX business. He, you know, had a great salary, went abroad, travelled. He came back and he was going to start up his own business. And then one of our mates' mutual friends said, "Just back yourself. Just back yourself." You know. And I think if you've got that, he had the knowledge, he had the connections. You know, it's a case of just backing himself. Now, you know, he's been in the Leadenhall building. He's had an office in Canary Wharf. You know, he's doing extremely well, and it's because he backed himself. You know, and I think that's, you know, how, no matter how colloquial it is, just backing yourself. You've got to have faith in yourself sometimes. Because if you don't have faith in yourself, no one is either. No one's going to have faith in you.
So how did your nearest and dearest react then? Because a lot of people say, "Oh, I've told my parents I'm going to start this property business, and they've told me I'm mad or it's a scam." So how did your sort of close family and friends react when you told them you were going to leave and start a business?
So, you know, nothing against my parents at all. Fantastic people. You know, they gave birth to me, obviously. But no, so my dad's old school. He's of the mindset, leave work. You know, he left work at 15, work till you're dead. You know, that's his sort of mentality. And a lot of things that I did growing up, I sort of did the opposite of what he said. So, you know, obviously I went to uni, but I said, I'm going to go traveling. He said, "Oh, you need to get a job." You know, I went traveling. Best thing I ever did. I learned so much about myself, and as cliched as it is. And then obviously I moved to Hull, you know, and when I was working in sales and I was out on the road, he said to me once, "Oh, you're just a traveling salesman."
Yeah.
And I know it's not all about money, but I was like, "Dad, I'm literally like early 20s earning more money than you sort of ever have," you know. And it wasn't until I got promoted again, he sort of thought, "Okay, I was actually doing all right." So when I said I'm doing the business, yeah, he obviously questioned things like, you know, "Oh, what are you going to do, blah, blah, blah." But my mum, she actually started a business she just sold it actually, 2000 something, I think. I think I was just like year 7 or year 8, 13 years old. So about 15, 16 years ago. So she sort of did the same thing that many years ago. So her and my uncle set up a care agency. So, you know, matching carers to service users, people who need care, live in care. So she basically did the same thing. So obviously when I said it to her, she was sort of, you know, in my camp said, go for it. You know, you'll do fine. You've always done well, blah, blah, blah. So it was a bit of a, you know, one on one shoulder, one on the other. But then, like I said, I just thought, sorry, I'm just going to back myself. And obviously my wife, I explained to my wife saying, "Look, you know, I've been given this opportunity. I want to do it." And she was like, "Well, you know, could you do it after Christmas instead of before Christmas? You know, can we get a few more months of like your salary banked in and stuff?" Because last year we moved and we got married. So our outgoings last year was ridiculous. But then one of the things as well, to move house, I was able to take some money out of my business to cover a bit of a deposit, and then obviously just pay it back. So I think like seeing how the business can benefit our life as well probably sort of helped. Like I said, the reason I went through all the spreadsheet and everything like that is to sort of display to her, say, look, you know, it is a risk. Everyone's a risk, but I've mitigated that risk as much as possible. This is where we are. This is what we do. You know, it's only been, what are we in April, close to 7 months, and I'd like to think I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
Everything's going well. But what I would say is, hypothetically, right, shit hits the fan. I don't know if, sorry if I keep swearing on your podcast, I just swear a lot, but let's say shit hits the fan, I can still go back to full-time work. Not that I want to, but with, like I said, my skill set, with my experience, I could, not that I could walk into any job, but I could get a job, whether it's half the money I was on, but enough to cover bills. Like, I'm not too proud to do that, you know, because I have a family at the end of the day, but I will not let that happen. I worked my bloody ass off, so I didn't have to do that.
I have a conversation with my dad, and it's about what ifs, because he's an architect. His brain's very much about what ifs, because if he gets something wrong, you know, people could die. And I try and explain to him that it's like, if something, you know, if you look at mitigating the risk and then something bad happens, when something bad happens to you in your life or your business, you don't just stand there still and it happens to you. You react and you adapt. And the analogy I say is, it's like, throw me in a river, right? I'm not just going to go like that and drown, right? You throw me in a river, I'm going to do everything in my power to get to the side and get myself out. All right. So don't think that if I do something or we make a decision and it doesn't go the way we want it to, that's the end. It's not the end. It just means we might be in a situation where we've got to paddle hard, or we've got to think and survive. And every situation I've ever been in that's bad, and I've been in some bad situations, I've always found a way out. So now what I try not to do is, I try not to do myself where I get into situations where I've got to rescue myself again, because it's, you know, it's not productive. But I don't think, you know, if there's a 15% chance of it not working, what's the worst case scenario? I'll just adapt and I'll just manage and I'll just do something. But don't talk yourself out of the potential because of the potential downside. So it's really interesting. So I've got a double-barreled question for you now, Dan. The first part of it is, how are you able to benefit in your new business with your transferable skills from obviously your background in sales to get off the ground quickly? And how did you go from zero to being in the game? What were your sort of strategies to, you know, when sort of like day one, you sat there in front of your computer, I need to build a business. What did the activity look like? And what were your sort of go-to remedies? And what I'm going to do quickly as well, when you start answering the question, I'm just going to nip off, fill my glass of water, and I'll come back. So just because I'm not sat here, I'm still here in presence, and I'll be back in a minute. All right.
All right, no problem. So yeah, with regards to you know, where I started and transferable skills, so essentially starting up the business, you know, I didn't know much about starting a business whatsoever. So obviously reaching out to people in that respect to sort of get some advice, but it's a case of just going ahead and doing it. You know, there's a lot of people out there that say sort of take action now, get perfect later. And that was sort of what I did. But in terms of transferable skills, I was fortunate whereby I'm a people person. I get on well with a lot of people, you know, and property is a people business. So I was able to meet with investors, meet with vendors, and build them relationships. I'm good at building rapport. I'm good at building relationships. I've had to do that. You know, I've had to gain trust. People need to like me, know me, and trust me, and that's quite important. Which I've been able to build upon that. Negotiation, I would say fantastic. I would say I'm good at negotiation. So obviously, when I'm trying to negotiate a below market value property, you know, I'm able to convey my message articulately in order for a vendor to understand. And you know, I'm not narrow-minded. I can look at, you know, I say a puzzle or a situation, and not just look at it in one way. I can look at it in various different ways. Okay, so the vendor is in this position. How can I benefit, or how can I help that vendor? There's probably 1, 2, 3, 4 different ways, you know, and it's about how you structure the message and how you structure the proposal towards a vendor. Same as investors, you know, working with investors, one, obviously onboarding them, building that relationship, delivering for them as well, you know, organization, timelines, you know, never overpromise, under deliver, because that's when you lose a lot of trust. So I think that's quite important as well. So using that's just a few of the key points, I guess. So negotiation, and rapport building and relationship building, really. That's what I've been able to sort of do. So when you say about going from zero to being in the game, what do you exactly mean on that? Do you mean from standing start to where I am now? Or?
To give you an example, when I first started, I went and worked for other agents as a subcontractor. So I went and did viewings for them and got paid per let. So I kind of got in the game, got out doing viewings while I was trying to get my own landlords. And I also did decorating. I painted people's houses. So I'd go and paint a student house and get paid, I don't know, $1,000 for it. So that's how I got in the game to start with. So
braver the man than me. I can't stand painting. That's one thing that I just cannot stand. I absolutely hate it. So for me, it was just getting out there and getting known. So, networking meetings, viewings, offering like social media. And I know you're passionate about social media, and, I need to be a lot more passionate about it, but I am. Like, the opportunity that can come from social media, most of my investors and most of the sort of people I've met, and some of the opportunities that have arisen have come through social media, and I didn't even meet half of these people, or I haven't met half of them. So yeah, just getting out there, being resilient. You're going to get told no. I remember I had an interview with my boss. I still get on well with him now, one of my old bosses, and he said, sales starts when they say no. It's not a sale if you say, "Oh, do you want this?" and they say, "Yeah," you're not selling, are you? You're just sort of offering them, I guess.
There's a book called Go for No.
Go for No, yeah.
Find the buy, they've said no, and then change it. What's really interesting about what you're saying, so anybody listening to this probably thinks that the first thing you should do is go and find some deals, get some deals, and then make some money. But everything Dan's just said, not about deals. It's about building relationships with people, about building his network, about connecting with the investors, because you should always start with the exit in mind. And a deal is only a deal if you've got someone who'll take that deal and pay you.
Subjective.
Exactly. What's the deal? Oh, that's not a deal because it's on the market. It is. If somebody wants to pay you to buy it, then it's a deal. That's the deal because it's 20% below market value. Yeah, but I don't have any investors for it, so it's not a deal. So the takeaway from that is focus on the relationships rather than the properties, because actually sourcing a property is a very small part of sourcing. I would say you should spend the majority of your time building your profile, attracting investors, speaking to investors to qualify them. And then when you've got people who want specific things and you know what they're looking for, when you go and see that vendor and you're going through that solution 1, solution 2, you should be going, oh, that one's, Michael will have that one, or Dominic will have that one, or that's suitable for Jerry. And then you can come out of that vendor meeting and get on the phone. I think I've got a deal for you. Are you interested? And it's pure selling. Sourcing is a selling job. And that's why people like yourself and like me do well in it, because we're good at building relationships and account managing. And, people want to build portfolios. They don't just want one property from time to time. So if we can build that relationship over time, we can help them build a portfolio and deliver the service, the sourcing, the refurbs, the lettings, the management, basically give everything for them on a plate so they can go off and do the thing that's either generate the money they want to invest or just enjoy the life and have more freedom to do what they want. Because ultimately that's why we get into property, isn't it? Because we want freedom.
Exactly. And I think, it's quite poignant what you just said. So when I first started out, let's strip it back. You've got deals and investors.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what it is. So if you go and find loads of deals, like I said, deals are subjective. Let's say you get 15, 20% ROI. You might have 10 investors that their minimum is 50% and a flip, not buy to let, buy refurbish, refinance. So you're flogging a dead horse, really. And then you have to obviously work your ass off to try and find the investor for that opportunity. And I'd say at first, I probably sort of went down the wrong route, but you learn from your mistakes, you take advice. And then I focused on finding investors. So I heard someone say sourcing is a personal property shopper.
Yeah.
That's all it is. So if you basically sit there, say to an investor, look, what do you want? What is it you want to achieve? All the qualifying questions, like you say, what's your return? Like, what type of property? What's your goals? Do you want to leave your work? Blah, blah, blah. So, once you have all that information, like you said, you can use that and go and find it. So it's a case of someone might come to you with a pink floral, knee-length shirt and say, Sam, I've got this shirt. It's fantastic, but it's 20% off like list price. So I don't fucking want a pink floral shirt at knee length.
Yeah.
So it's exactly the same, but if you said, I want a medium, a red with this sort of logo, blah, blah, someone can go and find that. And if they find an offer, then you take it. That's sort of, it's quite a little blasé sort of analogy, but that's how it is, get the investors, find out what they want, and then go find it for them.
Yeah.
It makes your life a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. So at the moment then, if you were to sort of think about your sort of medium to long-term plan, what is your current business strategy for growing your business? What are your plans? What does the future hold? And then what's your investment strategy? What sort of properties are you looking to add to your own portfolio?
So, myself and my business partner, when we, first sort of did set up the business, we had a business plan. We tore it up after about 6 to 8 months because we'd already blown it out of the water, and that's not me boasting, but it's me saying that in property, things always change.
Yeah.
You need to adapt, you need to sort of pivot, etc. So we're looking to grow our buy to let portfolio because, for me, I think fundamentally buy to lets are important. So we are focusing on growing our buy to let property portfolio. We're currently doing a flip at the moment. So what we do is we buy refurbished refinance properties. And if we leave any money in, we basically pay down the equity with the profit from the flips.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. So, we've done 5 buy refurbished refinances, 2 flips since late 2020 when we set up the business. So obviously we're focusing on growing that portfolio. But yesterday we actually had 2 days ago, we actually had the good news that our permitted development was granted for a commercial to residential conversion. Awesome. Now, the reason why I say we ripped up our business plan is because if you said to me 2 years ago, before I even owned a property, property sourcing, that in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, you'll have a portfolio of some buy to lets where you've done fantastic on the buy refurbished refinance, you've done a couple of flips, and you've just got permitted development granted for your commercial to residential conversion. I would have went, nah, no chance. But it's just about being dynamic and going out there. So one thing we found as well, you still do the same amount of legwork really for commercial to residential than you do for a buy to let. Now, I wouldn't say just jump straight into that because you still need to learn the fundamentals of refurbishment costs, throughout the process, and it has been a lot more difficult. So architects, you've got all your
more moving parts.
There's more moving parts. The compliance, the consultants for the acoustics, all that sort of thing. So that's what we're doing. I think we're going to be focusing on probably more of that commercial to residential, because ultimately our end goal is cash flow, and how can we maximize cash flow in as I say little effort as possible. But I say that flippantly. We're going to have 5 units, 600 quid a unit. If we essay a couple, £1 a month, you're talking just that one unit can do anything from 30 or K up to 50K just from that 1.5 bed. And, that's great. That's people's salaries. That's fantastic. So we want to get quite a few of them. But then doing that feeds through to our letting company. So organically, the more properties we have and the more properties we have around Hull, the more people see our signs, more people probably come to us. It grows organically. So all of the businesses feed each other. So I'm, going a really long-winded way about this, but we're focusing on commercial to residential properties in my sourcing company. So, we issued heads of terms yesterday. I can't really discuss too much about it, but all I'd say is keep listening, but buying into another business and launching another sort of arm to that. With this, it's still in sourcing. Still holds a big focus, but it's more national, so it probably covers part of London, Birmingham, Manchester, Nottingham. So it's a sort of larger coverage. So that's sort of going ahead at the moment, and then like I say, the letting side of things, just scaling that, bringing in staff to allow me to do the fun stuff, the business generation,
the important stuff. What's your biggest lesson that you've learned on your journey so far?
Do you know, I always sort of come prepped to this, but I'll just say you have to be consistent. And the reason I say that is you know, sometimes you have them bad days where, you know, you might wake up and think, I can't be asked to get out of bed or something like that. You're just having one of them days, you know. I remember once there was, I was going to a viewing, but I just couldn't be bothered. And it was literally just around the corner from me. And I sort of, you know, shook myself and said, Dan, just go. And I went to that viewing. It didn't work for me, but I walked out of the house. There was 2 empty homes opposite, bought both of them refurbished, you know, they've been rented for ages. And it's a case of just being consistent because, you know, there is opportunity around the corner and you will find opportunity, but unless you're being consistent, you're not going to. So you need to just get up and go, just be resilient, keep going, and it will pay off. Like I said, you know, I've been fortunate. I said I met my business partner, but I wouldn't have done that if I didn't source a deal. And to source a deal, I had to go on loads of viewings. I had to do X, Y, Z. So, you know, just be completely consistent.
Okay. And I guess my next question is quite kind of similar, but it was, what tips have you got for people who might be starting out, who wanted to start a sourcing business, and you'll give them a bit of inspiration?
Listen, I'm always open to helping people. When I first started, you know, there's loads of things that I didn't know when I first started, and there's probably a lot of things that people don't know. So one, I would say, leverage other people. You know, don't take everything and not give anything back. There's people that I sort of took some sort of knowledge from, and we've worked together now, so it's obviously bared fruit. Leverage other people. If you're first starting, like, maybe try co-sourcing to understand the mechanics. Build a relationship. It's all about relationships as well. Go out there and network, build relationships, meet sources, meet investors. You know, things might not happen for a few months, but what's happening throughout that term is you're gaining knowledge, and knowledge is invaluable. Once you have that knowledge and it's there, you know, your life becomes a lot easier.
Can't take it away, can they? Shameless plug. So if you're listening to this and you've got a basic understanding of property, maybe you've bought a few properties yourself, or you've done some training and you're looking to get into property sourcing, I run a mastermind called the Investor-Led Sourcing Mastermind, where the focus is all about finding the investors and making them want to work with you, where they'll pay you up front in some instances, but you'll be working with the right investors. So if you want to find out more about the course, check my link tree, check the link to the Investor-Led Sourcing course. And I basically teach people how to set up the systems they need to attract the investors, and then the automations and the workflows to move them through your business, how to sell yourself online, build your profile, and then when you've got the investor, what to say to get them to work with you, some sales scripts and things like that. So if you want more information about that, have a look at my link tree. And while I'm on the subject of shameless plugs, Dan, I know you've got your podcast. So do you want to give your podcast a quick plug?
Yeah, fantastic. So it's called A Whole Load Of, whole being HULL. So play on words there, you know, smart guy I am. A whole load of property business mindset. So a lot of my podcast episodes focus on, you know, people like it. Well, you know, I'm sort of preaching what it says, business, property and mindset. So there's people who have no affiliation with property, obviously giving tips in business generically, property investors, sources, got episodes coming up with tax specialists, you know, bridging finance lenders, etc. So I try to cover a lot of the bases across property business, and obviously mindset falls into both. You need to have a positive mindset. You need to, you know, work on your mindset to be successful, I think. So yeah, it's called A Whole Load Of Property Business Mindset, and you can find it on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and I have a link tree as well. So I can send you the link tree and you can post it in the show notes for people to find me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn as well.
Great stuff. And it's just worth saying that if you've enjoyed this podcast, please follow. It's on the relevant platforms. This will be going out on Spotify, Anchor, and Apple. Please leave me a comment or send some feedback so I can adapt and develop it in the future. Like Dan says, I'll include a link to his link tree in the description so you can look up his podcast. You know, if you're an investor and you're listening to this and you want to work with a, you know, highly motivated, competent sourcing agent in Kingston upon Hull, not Kingston upon Thames, you know, then get in touch with Dan. Obviously, if you want to work with me, you know where I am. I think that's about everything, mate, unless you've got anything else you wanted to add.
No, I'd just like to say, you know, appreciate you inviting me to come on. It's always nice to be at the receiving end of the questions. Obviously, I'm usually sitting in your chair doing this, and you know, especially for my listeners, they always hear me sort of directing questions, but, you know, if I can be cheeky and have this episode, it'd be nice for my listeners to sort of understand a bit more about me as well too.
Yeah, of course. And one thing that's important for me is that I give people a voice who might have a good story to tell, or who I think my listeners would take a lot of value from. So I appreciate you coming on the podcast. It's been a really good interview. I'm sure everyone will get a lot of value from that. And I will see you all in the next episode of the Evolution of a Property Business podcast.